and with me is our RCC. We have Alex in the back, virtual support, and Ja and Marcelina, our software manager. If you have any questions, they'll be helping you as we go through the session, okay? Okay, so the goal of today is to learn a little bit more outside of basic Python. So we're gonna do a little bit of file uploads and also how to load functions from a different file to another inside Python. Okay, so those are the two things we're going to be achieving today. To do this, we'll actually be doing a project from beginning to end. And the beginning slides is me talking what that project is going to be, and then I'll guide you through the actual coding. And this will be a live coding session. So I'll be typing and doing it with you guys, which means errors will happen on this side. Okay, so be patient with me. We'll delete those, we'll get them done together, and that makes sense. All good? Yeah, makes sense? Okay, so first things first. So the project itself, right, we're gonna do an intro to the files that you're getting on each one of their workshop accounts, and then how to use them on our open on-demand interface. So that's the interface to the high performance computing cluster here at Florida State. And then I'll talk you through the actual Python file and creating the different files that we're gonna be using today. The idea is to run a multiple file code. So you get familiar with how to load multiple files in Python and how to put functions in one file and call them from another one. Okay. We're taking a couple of assumptions here, and it's one that you know what Python is. Two, that you're able to use functions or that you at least know what they are, even though you haven't written them. We'll have a lot of practice today writing them. Okay. And at the end, we're going to plot some data. Okay. So the project itself, we're going to grab a CSV of world populations, and we are going to create two plots. One of them will be a pie chart of all the countries and the percentage per population of the world in 2023. And the second one will be a top 10 world population plot. Okay. And we'll be doing the pre-processing of that CSV. Any questions there? All good? Okay, so as you saw, the CSV has a lot of information, right? So our main goal is to extract the information we care about here, right? Put it in a format that works for our Python, and then plug that into the plots, okay? So that's a little mini project that we'll be doing in the next hour, 15, hour 20, okay? Everybody good? Make sense? Okay. Okay, so now that I've talked to you guys about how that's gonna go, I'm gonna move out of here and go into our open on-demand environment. Okay, so scare. Thank you. Okay. So when you open on demand, you should have landed on this page, right? This banner page here. Everybody got there with the logins. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the interactive apps section, and you're gonna go to Spider. That's the environment we're gonna be using today for Python. So once you click on Spider, you should get this. And there's a couple of things that you need to make sure are correct. One is that the Slurm account is workshop, okay? And then the number of hours can be 2 hours, right? And the amount of memory to be 24 gigs. Okay, that should give us enough to work easy with our code and for everything to run well. Once you have those three done, the rest are fairly set, and then you can click on launch. Okay, so everybody did that? All good? Doesn't here? Perfect. Once you click on launch, you should see the session pop up in My Interactive Sessions, right? And it will say it's on queue. And when it actually runs, this should light up green up here, and you can click on Launch Spider. Okay. Once you click on Launch Spider, you'll land on the actual Spider environment. Everybody here? Yeah, in Spider? All good. And this is the same process for any other platform that we have an open on demand, be it Jupyter Notebooks, or if you're a fan of using R, all of those are there, and you can use them on our cluster as well with the same process you saw here. Okay, so an intro to Spider, if you've never seen it before. Spider is a development environment for Python, and there's a couple things to explain here. First, you have on your left-hand side the actual file you're coding in, right? That's the pane we're going to be using the most. Then on your upper right-hand side, you're going to see different uh, different tabs. The Files tab, if you click on it, should give you all the files that you have in that account, right? And plots should change. If we make plots, they'll appear there as well. And help is also there for any usage and tutorials. So you can click through all of these. This will store all your variables, very similar to the R window, right? So these are all the different windows you can use in that top right-hand corner. In the bottom, you'll see the console of your development environment. And this means that every time we run some code, you'll see it say, I am running this file. Boop, that is happening. Okay, so that's what the console says. For purposes of this workshop, we won't be touching the console at all. We'll be working on the files on that side. Okay, any questions with the IDE, how it looks? Any questions online? All good till now? Perfect. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is open up all our files. For that, we click up on File, right? And we do Open. And that's going to give us the files there. And we're going to open the main.py file. Open. There we go. So our files are completely empty, right? You should just see a line of comments saying what we're going to do in each step. Now we're going to repeat that same process to also open up the CSV functions file. Open. Okay. Perfect. And you can go ahead and delete that temp or untitled py file that the that Spyder generates when you open up Spyder. That can be done. So we're gonna have these two files here. Okay. Also, anybody need me to zoom in into the main? All good? You all see pretty well? Okay. Okay, so why am I opening up these two files? In main, we're gonna have a workflow, right? Import CSV, change specific columns, plot them. In CSV functions, I'm just gonna have the functions I'm gonna be calling in into my file, into my main file, okay? So I'm gonna do all my actual writing and development here. I'm just gonna be importing them to main to maintain a nice and clean main Python file. Okay, so let's get started with how that will look. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is actually do the imports. Okay, so in the CSV functions file, we're gonna fill out that section 0 and we're gonna import pandas as PD. Okay, so pandas is just a package that does a lot of data processing for us, right? And we'll use some tools from pandas as we go in this seminar. It also allows us to load CSVs, which is gonna be our first task. Okay. The important thing here is as PD, because that way that's the name of pandas as we go forward, right? When we want to call it, we'll say PD and the function that we're calling from pandas after, okay? Okay, so once that is done, we're actually going to define our first function, which is going to import our CSV, and we're going to call it input underscore CSV file. Now, the structure that we use here is that we write DEF in front of our function name, right? That's saying the definition of this function is the following, okay? So DEF, and then we write parentheses, and that's our parameter. So that's what we're feeding into our function, right? That's our input. In this case, I'm just going to name our parameter CSV, right? And the parameter can be any variable name you want. In this case, I said CSV because we'll be fitting in a CSV for input. That make sense? Okay. So once that's done, at the end of that line, add a colon, right? And that should be our first line of code, right? So now we need to actually tell the function what it's doing, right? I'm fitting in a variable. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say data frame. Yes. Oh, you're good. I'm going to say data frame equals PD dot read underscore CSV. You should see it pop up here in your help part of Spyder. And that means you're on the right track and you're writing it correctly, okay? And add the parentheses and you're gonna say CSV, okay? That line is loading our CSV as a data frame with pandas, okay? So let me No, I did it. Let's see if this works. Okay. Perfect. I'm gonna do that because it's hard for me to see what's there. Okay. So once I loaded the data frame in, I'm creating a function for a reason, right? If it was a single line of code, I could do this in my own main code, right? I wanted to do something more with that CSV file. In our case, I wanted to print the first, oh my bad. Okay, I want to print the first five. Mhm. There we go. I want to print the first five rows of our data frame. So I'm going to say first five equals data frame dot head, right? Five. That specifies that I want to take the head of my data frame, the top part. I want to print out not only the column names, but also the first five rows. Okay. So it's good practice as well to add comments to what's happening in each line. I will not be doing that through the whole seminar because it takes time to add them, but feel free to. The other good practice is to add function doc lines, right? Which is to add, sorry, which is to add these, right? And actually Spider does it for us, right? It creates a doc line here that says what are the parameters of the function, what is the function returning, what it's trying to do, and there you would write, oh, I made this function to do this and this and this. And it's good practice because when you come back in months of time, you'll be wondering what you did and why you did it. Okay. So I'm actually going to delete this doc line now, but that's just the way you generate it is with three quotation marks. Huh? Three double quotation marks, important. Okay. So it's done. So we have the data frame and we have the first five, and we actually want to print those first five. So the last thing I'm going to do is print first five. Okay. Now, this function is going to read our CSV, but how can we operate on the CSV after the function is done? We need to return something. The function has to output something out, right? And for that, we finish our function with a return statement and we say return data frame, okay? And that completes our function. It reads it in, it prints out the first five, and it also returns the data frame so I can use that data frame for future functions, okay? Any questions there with that one? We still haven't run anything, so nothing should be broken yet, but we're so close, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and zoom out so I can run this. Oh, so much brightness. Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and save the CSV functions file, okay? If it has an asterisk in its name up top, it means that file is not saved yet, all right? So once I save the file, you should see that asterisk disappear in Spider, and I'm good to go. So now I'm gonna go to the main PY file, and I'm gonna import my function in, right? So I'm gonna go from, my bad, from the CSV functions, right, which we just made. You got it? Yeah. From CSV functions, I'm gonna import the function called input underscore CSV file, okay? So that's telling it this is the function we're using, I'm importing it, okay? Now I'm gonna go ahead and call it by saying data equals, and then using the function that we just created, input underscore CSV file, and then stating the CSV file name. In this case, that would be 2024. You should have it there on your right-hand side. That's the name of the CSV, right? So we're gonna write that in. So you should have 2024 underscore CS underscore population dot CSV. Important note here, right? The file is in the same folder as my Python file. If that is not the case, I need to write the path for my file, right? I need to be able to tell Python where to find my file at the moment. In this case, the file is right there, so I just state the name and we're good to go. Okay? Any questions there with this one? All good? So now that we've saved both, we're gonna go back to CSV functions, right? And I'm gonna actually run the file. Okay, go ahead and click up top at the run file little green triangle, right? This should run our CSV functions. If you're wondering if it did run the file, you can see down in your console, and it should say the file that it ran. Okay, it should say CSV functions.py, and you can see that it ran the file there, okay? I'm gonna stop here for a minute. Everybody was able to run the CSV functions file. The functions were well, they're good. Okay, help you. Make sure that you don't have maybe a formatting error, maybe a tab here, a tab there, point, period. All good? Perfect. Okay, so once CSV functions is run, we can go back to the main PY file and we can go ahead and run this file as well. Okay. And we'll see in our console the output that we created. Okay, I'm gonna. Sorry, y'all. Let me escape these. Perfect. Okay, so you should see in your console the output of our data set, right? We asked it to print out the first 5. Those are our first 5 rows there, right? So you should see the whole data there. Yeah, of course. So once the CSV functions file is run, we go back to the main file, right? And we run the whole file at once, right? And this will import our function and it will also run our function and create the data set. Of course, is here all good? Ran? Okay. Don't remember, raise your hand. That's why we're here. Okay, so I'm gonna take a minute here while we get the most important part, get that in. That's done. Okay, sure.
And then so
I don't know what's.
this is the data you need to retrieve.
I could just go over to CSV functions file.
Right.
And did you run this file? This one, yeah.
Okay, so for context of those online, the error that's sometimes going to happen is that your CSV functions, it'll give you an error here that says you can't access this function, which means that in here it's named something different. So you just want to double check both of your files. And that's why this one's intermediate. So, oops. Oh my goodness. Okay, so for context, that's what we're fixing in person. It's the same as in
Did you run this out?
Oh,
This one? Yeah. The link. But.
input.
So you did the vote. Okay. So,
Question,
yes.
is it possible to run the main file and CSV function file in a single file?
Yeah, you can have functions in the same file as where you call them, right? We're just keeping them separate to teach you how to do the from and the import, right? That's the main difference. But you can usually I have all my functions in the same place, and then after months of work, I'm like, oh, I should separate these. These are too many lines. But if we're only working with a little bit, I would keep them in the same file. You're correct. Yeah. That way it all runs at once. Not that much of it. Okay,
Yes.
we all good here, with this one?
Is it good?
I'm
Oh.
gonna wait for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we all good there?
Yeah.
Better?
It was CSV and we put.
CVS, okay, don't worry, it happens. Okay, so our data is in there, right? And the first thing we want to achieve is pulling the columns out, right? Because we want to be able to just keep the population column and the name of the country column. I don't really care about the rest of the columns. As we saw, there's a ton of information in there. So we're gonna go back to our CSV functions file, okay? And I know there's gonna be a lot of back and forth in between files, so I'll try to be as clear as possible when I move, okay? And where it says function 2, 3, and 4, that's where we'll be working for the next few minutes, okay? We're gonna extract multiple columns, but the first goal is to get one out, right? I wanna get one column out of that data set. Okay, so we're gonna call this function extract one column. Okay. And we're gonna feed it both the data frame and the column name. Okay. So it's gonna be in this case, we're working already with two parameters. Important for our parameters is that we separate them with a comma, okay? And that we remember the order. Because when we use the function, we need to feed it the data name and the column name. But if I do it in the reverse order, it won't know what to do. Okay, so remember what order you write this in. Okay? Yeah. Oh, so you can see it? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna extract that one by saying okay. We're gonna say I want to print out the first 5 of that column, and we do that by saying data frame, and then we use the square brackets, okay? In the square brackets, we're gonna write the column name. Okay, and this is actually enough to extract our column. And we can do head 5, right? And that should give us, I'm actually gonna define this, my bad. I'm gonna define this as the first 5 of one column. Sorry for the roundabout way around that one, okay? So we are extracting the first 5 records of said column from our data frame, okay? That makes sense? Yeah? Okay. Take a minute there to type it in. Yeah. Okay, so now we're actually gonna print them out to make sure that we have the correct column. We're gonna print out and say our first 5 records are, and then a comma, and then we're also gonna print the variable that we defined up top. First 5, one column. There we go. Okay. Oh, and then close parentheses at the end of that print statement, okay? Oh, yeah, thank you. All good now. Okay. So usually we wouldn't have these many prints, but for purposes of seeing it actually happen, they're very useful to get stuff on the console working before we get to the plots. Because now, if not, it'd be an hour of work, nothing actually outputting, and then at the end, woohoo, I get something. Okay. So lastly, I want to return something, right? In case I want to use this column for something, I'm going to return data frame column name. Right. What am I returning there? What is that line returning me with this function? Huh?
The column name for the.
No, so we already gave it the column name, right? The whole column, right? I'm returning the entire thing, right? So even though we printed the first 5, I'm returning the entire column to be used in a later date. Okay? Make sense? Important that we get this one because we'll extract 2 columns later, right? And we'll use both together. Okay, but once this is done, right? This is the end of our function. We're gonna go ahead and run our file again, our CSV functions file, right? And I need to go, once we run it, we go back to main, right? And now we have a new function to import, right? So after CSV functions, after that input CSV file, I'm gonna put a comma and I'm gonna write my new file name, which is extract. And this is actually really nice that it tells you what it is because now we'll be back and forth and even more than we do, right? Extract one column, okay? And we're actually gonna use that one to say one column equals extract one column. And remember the order we put them in, right? We need to be able to feed our data frame first, which in this case is called data, and then feed in the name of the column we want, which in our case is 2023 _ population. Okay? So this is where we're calling our function, right? We're feeding in our data frame, we're feeding in our column name, and at the end, we're extracting a single column of code. Okay? Now, when you're ready and that's done, go ahead and run it, right? On our file again. We'll run the whole file, so you should see. You should I dislike this thing. Hide. It's already making controls. There we go. So you should see it print out the first 5 records. So you should see it's gonna have the index on this side. So it starts at 0, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's the top 5 countries in terms of population, but no name. So these numbers mean nothing right now. We just have numbers. Okay. I'm gonna put a pause right here, 2 minutes to make sure everybody gets to this part. Okay.
Can you close the code again?
Yeah, go ahead. Let me move back. Okay, I'm gonna move back to the code. Okay. Also, Python is case sensitive, so data and lowercase data, not the same, okay? Just in case that's an error that pops up, which is usual and happens.
Oh, you didn't hear. So we haven't done it. The recognition feature. There you go. Yeah. So while you're waiting, can you explain why 2023 populations, like where's that going?
Oh, yeah. So that's the name of our column, right? So let's look back at the data set that we printed. So if we go down to the console, right, we see that there's a bunch of column names up top. The ISO code, the country name, 2024 last updated, and it keeps on going with column names. So one of them is 2023 underscore populace. Okay. In this same way, I could extract word percentage, I could extract world rank, I could extract whatever I want from it. Okay. So that way we can get any and all of the columns that we want out of there. Okay. Makes sense. I'll wait 1 more minute and then we'll keep on going.
Is there a function that will return all the column names?
Yeah. One of the pandas, I forget the exact name of the function, but there's a function in pandas that gives you all the names out. I'm gonna be racking my brain trying to find it. It's yeah. Yeah.
Can you switch to the CSV?
No, you got it. CSV functions. This one right here.
After when you type the function, then it will have generated one.
Click on that one. Yeah. Yeah, that's the best way. If it gives you the name, use it. Yeah. Why not? Also, any questions online, Alex? All good? Nothing? Perfect. Okay. All good there? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So the next one, right, is to extract more than one column. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my CSV functions Python file, right? And I'm gonna write our third function. This one I'm gonna define it as is the same format, right? But I'm gonna say extract and then columns. Okay, so same thing, I'm gonna feed in a data frame. Now, the only difference is that I'm actually gonna feed in a column names instead of name, and this will be a list of names, right? This won't just be a single name. Right, but with the variable stays the same because I'm just gonna feed the variable itself, right? Even though it is a list. Remember to add the colon at the end of that one. Now, the first thing we do, right, is to extract. So we're gonna, if we move out more than one column, right, we can read those into a new data frame to use again. Okay, so I'm gonna define a variable called new data frame. And I'm gonna data frame and then same format, extract column names. Right? Getting an arrow. No, okay, we're good. Perfect. And then at the end, I'm gonna return that new data frame. Okay. Why is it still getting an error? Column. Oh, an extra S. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. There's this thing. There we go. Oh, I can move this. Ah, perfect. Okay, pretty simple function, this one. Okay, I'm not trying to print anything out. Now that we know it works, we're just applying the same thing twice, okay? Our next step after this one will be to write it to a CSV, so we can use it again, okay? Showing you how to output data once it's extracted. Once you have the extract columns completed, you're reading a new data frame and you're returning it, right? We can go ahead and run our file again, run our CSV functions file again, and then go back to the main PY and do the same process we did once again. So we make sure that we import our new name by writing it, the extract columns one, right? And we extract it by saying new data frame. And I'm going to extract it by calling my function extract columns. Okay, and it will give me the placeholders of what do I have to fill in. Remember to change the name of the data frame for actual data. Columns. And then here's the issue. I said I was gonna do more than one column name. Okay, so I need to feed in a list of actual column names, and that's the one we do. So to define a list, right, I'm gonna use the square brackets again. And within those square brackets, I will write both of the things I want to pull out. In this case, it will be the names for the column country and the column 2023 population. Okay. Make sure that you use the square brackets, right? Or it will not create the list. Okay. Making sense? So this will extract our new columns and put them in a new data frame. Okay. Once you're ready, you can go ahead and run it. So no issue. So you should see it come up in your variable explorer. The data frame with two columns of 216 rows each, right? You see there, those are the dimensions of the size of your data frame. The original was 216 by 11, right? 11 columns. This time you have 216 by 2 columns. Okay, that lets us know we did it right. We have them. Okay. Some questions there? All good? Okay. I'm gonna move back to the code. In case anybody is reading that code there. Okay. All right. Include that. CSV functions, you got it. This one right here. Yeah. Okay, all good there. So the next step is to write it to a CSV, right? If we ever make an analysis, we want to make sure that we're able to output our results somewhere. Okay? So, oh no, you got it. So let's take 2 minutes before we move to the next one. You're good. So if you have any questions, just let me know. If it's not about this or additional stuff, just let me know.
So that, yeah, that's already here. This is your new data frame on the longer. Yeah, so there should be three, and then where's? And then it's over. Oh, you gotta find it.
The thing, if I have this extract columns function right here, what happens if I were to feed in 3 column names? Would it still work? Would my function still work? Yes or no? If I were to put in 3 column names instead of 2, and like we did, would it still work? Yes, right? Because I just said it was a column names list, so it doesn't matter how many I put in. Now, if I wanted to check that, I could, right? Using an if else statement, I could say if 3, no, right? So I could add an extra loop to check it if I wanted to, right? But if I'm just interested in getting any number that I want to input it out, that makes sense. Okay? So just putting that out there that add as much flexibility as you can within your functions if that's what you're looking for. But if you wanted to do something very specific, then you can also do that. Okay. We're not gonna actually use any loops here, but loops within functions give them a lot of flexibility and lets you do a lot of stuff in a single function. Okay. Cool. Okay. We'll wait 1 more minute there before we go to the CSV writing part of this. Okay, I'm gonna combine these and take up less of space. Okay. So our next function is gonna be to actually write them to the CSV. So this one I'm gonna call extract columns to CSV, right? And it will be an improvement on our previous one because it will allow me to take the columns out, but also pass them to a CSV all in a single file swoop. Okay, so we'll combine all the things we did. So the inputs are going to be again our data frame, our column names, and we add a new one, which is going to be our CSV of output. So I'm going to call it output underscore CSV, right? So we're up to a 3 parameter function, right? Oh, my bad. Move the cursor. We're up to a 3 parameter function, right? And we're going to do the same thing. So we create a new data frame where we extract our columns, right? And then column names. And then we're gonna use the to CSV method, okay? So the way we do that is by writing new data frame period to CSV with an underscore between 2 and CSV, right? And this should write whatever data frame we have to the output CSV that we define, right? And important, I want to add that I don't want to write the indexes of the rows, right? Yes.
Output underscore CSV.
Right. Output underscore CSV. Thank you. And then we write index, right? Because I don't want to save the indexes equals false, okay? So this will allow me to not save indexes as an extra row in my CSV. And as an extra column, my bad, okay? Okay. So this is actually a really solid function, combining more than 2 actions in a single thing that I can reuse over and over again. That is the idea of having functions and packaging it all together. Okay, perfect. So once you have it written, you should be able to run the file again, right? Run our CSV functions file, go back to the main, write our new function name by doing, right? Columns to CSV. So now we have a new function name, and now we're gonna call that function by saying extract columns to CSV with the data argument, the same column names that we used before, right? So it's gonna be country and the 2023 population. And then the last, remember to close with the square bracket, and then one more field that is our output CSV. And I'm gonna actually call this CSV short.csv. Okay, and that needs to be a string as well. So remember to put it in quotation marks. We'll stop here so you can take a look at how that function call is written, okay? So important that there will be 2 commas, right? One inside our list, defining those are 2 separate columns, but also one between each of our parameters, okay? And that syntax can get a little confusing, so just make sure that you put the commas where they go, right? And that you define a .csv file for it to be written to, right? Because the computer needs to know that this is a .csv file once it's saved, okay? CSV stands for comma separated values. It's how data frames or how Excel sheets are saved, right? Separating value by a comma. Okay. Once you have it there, you should be able to run it, right? See if I, right? And if all went well, if you look at your files, you should see a new .csv file pop up, right? And that CSV will have the same 2 columns. I'm gonna stop here for 2 to 3 minutes, make sure everybody has this CSV done, because we'll do the plotting from this CSV. We'll do the cleaning and the plot. We'll do both things from here, okay?
The goal,
The what?
the goal.
Which one? This one or the main? There we go. What is it?
Sure.
It's okay.
Says, he's like, can you find this? But am I supposed to have a space there? No, or is it supposed to both be like?
No, so it's parentheses for the functional.
Okay.
So that instead of a square bracket, that's a parentheses and it's parentheses as well.
Oh, okay, both of them are supposed to.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's all good. Like we have the good one then.
It's also, see.
No.
They have the propensity by organics.
Yeah.
I didn't have propensity by.
Let's go.
Oh, okay. Yes, so output underscore C.
I'm trying to do it without writing.
See it.
So I should be able to call.
Right where you are, just have CSV.
Dot the.
It's probably
all.
and then comma,
Or comma.
yeah, and then the espacio, and then index
Something else, yeah.
equals,
Equal.
and then plus, for,
Close.
yeah,
Enter.
there we go. So that's the,
Run.
you're on that one, And then you go to go.
I'm not gonna go first, right?
No, it's.
Yeah, I'm sure, you're right.
Correct the name.
Let me see if I work.
Yeah, and then.
So,
To see.
Choose to get me, and never do this.
Número de la función. En vez de extract, es extract. Como te pasó una serie,
Oh.
todo lo mismo. Solamente hay.
Yeah, so that if you don't do index equals.
Ah,
then
that's-
say that-
well,
Do not get a.
No,
Mhm.
la prueba completa. Está completa. Ahora, añada ese, no, es ese.
Index or.
Y coma.
Or.
Y ahora empieza a escribir la.
Yeah, correct.
Is the.
De nuevo extract. Ahí, yes.
Okay.
De clicar. Ahí está, ahí.
Okay.
Ah,
So-
y tengo que cambiar este.
Sí, tiene que también ser extract. Tiene que ser el mismo número.
Ah, es. Six,
Ujú.
sorry, there's right.
You
don't have. Ah, that's it.
Muy bien, gracias. No, lo quiero. Yeah.
It says, it says that this, when I did it here, I mean, I'm now retyping it, but it doesn't recognize,
So we don't brackets.
it doesn't recognize this, function.
Okay, did you run this file? Correct.
Yeah.
That's okay, and the other one, let me see it. Did you?
I mean, when I type it, extract. Or,
Yeah, it's not there. It should have appeared already. You go ahead and try running in, let me see the function. Okay, try running it again. Yeah, and then go back. Oh, you didn't import it. Not imported at all.
Oh.
Yeah, if it's not imported, I won't appear file. You're good. Yeah.
Now
You get there.
Now that makes sense. I thought it
Yeah.
was,
No, you're good. Still some manual things driving Python. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, we're good? Question right there?
This shot here has been created before that, for that, if that's the middle of that shots, see it?
Put it in a folder?
I mean, we did the shots dossier. Does that reflect another file?
Yeah. So if you look up in your files, if you go ahead and click on, if you go ahead and click here on files, you should be able to see the new file saved there. Yeah. So this is the way, if you want to write any file in Python, this is the way. .2 CSV, and you'll be able to output a new file there, okay? Okay. Yeah, definitely. So now we'll actually be cleaning short CSV before we do the plot. Okay, we're gonna do 2 more functions to clean, and then we'll plot itself. Okay. Are we done with good? Everybody has short CSV ready to go? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so we're going back to the functions, and we finished 2, 3, and 4, right? That were our extract columns one, and now we're gonna go down to. Oh, so far away. Okay, now we're gonna go down to the cleaning and processing functions, okay? So our short CSV is good, right? But we can make it better. The main thing that needs to be fixed is the numbers, right? There's 2 things, the numbers and the column names. So let's start with the column names, right? If we want to change what those are called, we can actually feed in a new list of names.
So you know what you're.
Oh, there we go. So this is short.csv, okay? So we have country, 2023 population, and we have the list. So can you tell me what the numbers are? Are they numbers in Python? Like would read as numbers? No, they're characters, they're strings, right? Because of the commas. Okay, so that's a big issue right now, because if I wanted to make the plots, I can't divide them, I can't sum them, and I definitely can't create pie charts out of them, because I can't divide and get the percentage. Right, so I need to first clean up the numbers, turn them into actual numbers and not just characters, just for strings of characters. And then I want to rename the columns up top so I can be able to set my names better and say, oh, this is just population. Because if I don't have more years, then why would I have the years on there? Okay, so let's write the clean numbers one first, which is our biggest issue for pre-processing. Okay. Okay. So for that one, we're gonna define again our function and we're gonna call it clean underscore numbers. We're gonna feeding a data frame again, and we're gonna feed in a column name. In this case, we know it's a single column, but if you're going to apply this to many columns, which would be the case with this data set, then I want to be able to do the same process with different ones. Remember the colon at the end. I'm gonna go down so you can see it better. Okay, and once we have that, right, and we're gonna introduce a new method here, which is the dot replace, right? That's a new function that will change something in there. So this is how it looks like. We're gonna define our data frame column, right? And we're gonna say, for that data frame column, I wanna change every record in that data frame column. That's the way we do this, by doing equal to data frame column again. And I'm gonna use the methods. So I use dot str, which means dot string, right? Because we're editing strings. And I'm gonna use the dot replace. Oh, my bad. Dot replace, okay? Now the syntax is kind of funky, but just make sure that we have the dot str and the dot replace on there. And what am I gonna replace? I'm gonna replace every single comma that I have, right, with nothing. I want to eliminate every single comma. All right. So it's important that we use the quotation marks, right? Because we have to make sure that we're replacing a specific character and that we're returning a character. In this case, nothing, right? And that should put everything together. Does that make sense? This is the weirdest out of the box one we use. Okay.
Why replace the comma when like the prints, the like quotation marks are the problem, right?
Yeah, so, but, okay, if I wanted to convert the number straight to integer, it wouldn't because there's a comma in the middle, and that's not an integer character, right? So once we do when we take the commas out, we can read into the number. Yeah, question?
Yeah, can we use type instead of replace?
So we're gonna use type after replace. So we're gonna use both functions in a row. So this is the first step, right? So to get every comma out of there. And the next one is, to answer your question, is to turn it into an actual number now. So now we use the same format, right? And we're gonna go data frame, column, right? We're gonna apply transformation to the whole data frame column. This is the same format, but instead of the .str, we're gonna use the as type command, okay? And to answer the online question, I could use the simple type command using a for loop and going through each of the records and changing each one separately. I decided to use this one just to keep it concise, okay? But in programming, there's many answers to the same question, as in most things, okay? So dot as type, and then I want to say what type int. I want to turn it into an integer. I could turn it into floats, right? If I had a lot of decimals and a lot of fractions, I would turn them into floats instead. For those not familiar with what I'm talking about, ints means integers in Python, strs means strings, and float means float numbers that we usually use for big descriptions or this. Okay? All good there? So, everyone understands what those two lines are trying to do? What they do for that specific column? Okay. Now, please pay attention that none of these actually write a new data frame. All of these transformations happen in our data frame. So I'm not writing a new one. I'm just transforming the one I have. Okay? That makes sense? So let's actually put them to use. Okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and run the CSV functions file. Now I'm gonna go back to my main file. I'm gonna import. This import statement is getting long. I'll have to do something about it next time. So comma and yeah, I could.
Just to shift the, so do you have to this one? So as long as you have a comment, then you can enter on the next line.
Okay, don't worry about it. There we go. So the next one is gonna be, right, so we input in our clean numbers function. I'm gonna try to click on it so it's easier. Now, to clean it, we have to load it first, right? Because we're gonna make sure that we are working with the short CSV and not our original CSV. So the first thing we do is import our CSV using the pandas read CSV that we used earlier, right? So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna call this the population data. I'm gonna equal, I'm gonna go down, pandas dot read CSV. PD dot, yeah. And then I'm gonna read in my short dot CSV. Now, will that line work if I run it right now? The pandas one. It's not a trap, I promise. I'm not gonna jump at you. Yes or no, would it work if I run it? Huh?
No.
No, it won't because I haven't imported pandas on this file. I imported pandas on my other file, okay? So if we're gonna use pandas here, right, I need to add a section in my imports upstairs in the section for imports. I write import pandas as PD, okay? This is also a very important reason of why we keep imports up top of most of our files. It lets us keep track of what's in there. Right? If we keep importing stuff in the middle, it can get kind of lost and messy quickly. Okay. So once import pandas is written, throwing up an error somewhere. No. Then I can pd.csv. Okay. So once that is read in, right, and you can run it now or wait till we write the clean numbers function to run it. The next one is to actually clean it. So we're gonna say clean numbers of our population data. And I want to clean the column name population. So 2023 underscore population, right? And this is going to apply the function that we wrote that takes the commas out and turns it into integers to our entire column of 2023 population. My bad. I forgot an underscore here somewhere. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Those are two new lines in May. All right. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and run them, see if any mistakes along the way. All right, if we didn't, we should see our new variable explorer, a new data frame called population data with those two pulled out. Important that if I click on it, these are now integers, right? We can now see that they're numbers, right? There's no comma on there and they're identified as a column that has integers on them. Okay, so I'm gonna have, again, click it out. Okay. For us, like humans that are reading, the new data frame and the population data look identical. For the computer, there's a clear difference between one that has strings and one that has numbers. Okay, so that's why we created a new one there. I'm gonna take a short break here just because I know that this is a tricky spot where we're writing stuff in and out and reading it back in, but good there. So copy, there. There we go. Columns and yeah, yeah. All good there? Good there? Any questions there?
No. Oh, I think that, yeah, I think that.
Same thing. Okay. And I promise we're so close to seeing colors on the screen, like fingers crossed. That's all. Now you know when you see a nice plot the next time, you'll be like, oh wow, they really know what they're doing. They got the whole thing. Okay. Okay. Take one more minute here and then get ready for. All good? Okay. So we're gonna write one more function for in our CSV functions file, and that is to rename our columns. Right? Right now we have the default names that we called in. We're gonna define a new one called rename underscore columns. We're gonna feed in the same thing, a data frame and a new names list. Okay. So those are the two variables we're using this time around. So let me scroll down so you can see it. Okay. And we're gonna, and this is actually the question you asked me earlier about column names, pulling them out, how to pull them out completely. We do it by doing data frame dot columns. And that will give us all the column names. In this case, we're gonna do data frame dot columns equals our new names list, right? And that will pass our past names into these. Okay, so it will, as long as they're the same length. So we need to make sure that we're feeding in two column names. And this is the importance of not saving our index as a third one, because then here I would have to also put a name to my column name index. Okay, so make sure that if we write this one, we would have to make sure that the new names is a list with only two things. If now say, hey, where do I put the third thing? I don't have three columns. Or if you put a single thing, I'm missing a column, right? Won't know what to do. Does that make sense? Okay. So, it says that. I'm gonna actually return. No, I don't need to. Okay. Okay. So, everybody good with that one? You can go ahead and that's a really short one. This actually does not need to be a function. This could have been just a line of code, but just to keep everything in nice context. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and run this. Oh yeah,
Instead of having this all on one.
so you could have all of these on one. The idea is that if I'm combining stuff from different places. So for example, we just finished all the CSV functions to pre-process our CSV. Now we're gonna add our plotting functions to actually make the plots. If I keep those on separate files, then I know where the issue is in case I ever wanna fix it. And we're assuming really big code, right? If I'm doing this 6 functions or 5 functions, I would actually keep them in a single file with the code below it. I don't think there's an issue on that, right? It's just for purposes of the seminar, having a short, nice, concise one. Yeah. Any other questions online? All good? If you,
It's the same thing either way. I think the point of this, since we're flipping back and forth between Python files, it's a little bit easier than scrolling all the way up and scrolling all the way down, back and forth. Because that's how it is in other programming languages as well, yeah.
we're good there? Okay, so remember to run your CSV functions file before you head over to the main. And then when you head over to the main, you can go ahead and call your rename. Oh, sorry, I forgot a step. I gotta import it first. Whee! All the way to the end of the line. Okay, so comma and then rename columns. Okay. So once I have it, I can go ahead and call it below my rename columns function. The data frame is the population data one. Don't call your original data one, right? We're working on the population data one. And the new names, you can name them whatever you want essentially, but I'm gonna create a list and the first one's gonna be country with a capital C. And then the next one's gonna be population with no E or number, okay? Also with a capital. This is just so they look nice on the plots, right? And they're nice on the index. Remember to close both your square brackets of the list and also close with parentheses at the end of your function call, okay? We'll create rename columns. Perfect. Okay, so now we can hit run. And it should have run, okay. And if we see our population data, we now see that the column names have changed for country and population, okay? And if we were to click on it, we can actually see the whole data as well. And we can see the names that are changed as well with our numbers being integers. So we have achieved it. We have a clean data set with only the columns that we care about, right? And now we can proceed to the plotting part of it. Okay, I'll take a minute here, make sure that everybody arrives to this clean data frame. Good.
I'm trying to see the actual,
Where's that?
how to like print. this. So that was impossible.
Oh, print where?
Print, I wanna print, it's so make sure they actually change it. Like I wanna change, I want,
The column name?
yeah, I wanna print like my.
Yeah.
CSV.
You can go ahead and do
Like the first. But then I was looking, I did this,
Yeah.
and it didn't work. This ran, everything else ran.
And when you run the whole thing, what does it do? Oh, do print F5. So put print and then the parentheses and stuff in there. There you go. Perfect. The same? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Also, this, another reason for doing functions, this is way easier to read than functions with, like, having all the functions back to back. If I were to have all the code on the other side together, it wouldn't be that bad to read now. It would be, I have maybe like 70 lines in total, 80 lines, not bad. And if I had comments, maybe it gets to 100, right? But if we're doing more than just this and a lot of processing, then it would take quite a bit of commenting to figure out what's what, right? Which is good practice. Comments are essential, okay? Now, as we get ready for the next part, I actually want you guys to open another file, right? So we're gonna open our plot functions file and start getting familiar with what's in there. We gave you the plot functions written, right? Just because they're pretty verbose. But we're gonna change some parameters around so you get a feel of what's what in each of the functions. Just because the functions are quite large in terms of doing stuff, and they're a different skill set than the data processing that we wanted to focus on. Okay. Back to the debate. We. Good. Perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at how those plot functions look. Okay, so we have the first one is the pie chart one, right? And you're gonna see that I actually put docstrings on these, so it's gonna say what it does. It creates a pie chart with the total population of the world distributed by country. Wow, I put fold the world. And then for the data frame input, it's gonna say that's the input data, right? And at the bottom, we have the actual things that happen. So it should give you, let me zoom it out. There we go. It should give you, I'm gonna explain what each of these lines does. Right, so we have, so let me just highlight them. So we have PLT, which is the library for Matplotlib. Okay, this is the library we're using to plot stuff. We tell it how big to make our figure in terms of like dimensions. We tell it what data I want to load and what labels I'm loading. In this case, the country. Let me move farther that way. And then we move it. There we go. And then the angle of how it should be arranged, okay? Then the next line gives us the title, right? Which in this case, I'm just gonna say population distribution by country. And then the axis, so it should be equal for all, right? It should be a nice round circle. Some of these are overkill arguments. I just put them in there so you can see how many arguments I can add to this, right? And then at the end, a dot show. The dot show is important because it's actually gonna show our plot in the plot window. Yeah, in the pop in the corner. Now, if I were to save this, I could. There's an actually in Matplotlib a save to image, save to JPEG method. That way I can actually have my files to take out of the computer. In this case, show is enough. Okay. The second one of these is top 10 bar chart. Right, same thing. I input the data frame and I should get out thing. This also the importance of having the same column names, because you can see here that I put the column names population and country. So if you have different ones and you run them, they will not run. Okay, just a caveat in case you got creative with the column names, go back and change them. Okay, because they will not run. Now in the same format, dot figure how big it is, what data I'm gonna use, the title, the labels for my x-axis and my y-axis, the ticks. So that means like which lines I want and how oriented I want them. You can really get really customized with your plots here. And then at the end, I want a dot show, and I want to make sure that all my columns are close and not far apart. So I use the type layout option at the bottom. Okay. Well, yeah. Also, feel free. You can here you can change the color ones, like the color or how big to make it, or if you want to space them out. All of those can be changed. The ones that can't are the ones referencing the data, right? The things pulling out country and population and the country columns. But everything else, yes, you can mess with it any way you want. Okay. So before I leave you to experiment, let's actually use these. Okay. So remembering the names, which are top 10 bar chart and create pie chart, right? I'm gonna go ahead and run the plot functions.py file completely. And this should run well, unless you don't change anything. And the main py one, right? I'm gonna now import all functions from my plot functions module. So once I do that, I go from plot functions, import, and if I put an asterisk, I actually imported all my functions, right? This is the way to import every function that you have in that file. And we did the CSV one by one because we were making them, but in this case, they're both there. So might as well import them both at once, right? Instead of writing each of their names. Once that is done, I can go ahead and use my functions. All right, so I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna run my bad. And I'm gonna run create pie chart, right? And it's a good indication that that popped up. Another thing about Spider that's really cool, if you have a doc string that's well formatted with the quotations, this will pop up and it will give you the help doc string for your specific function, even if you made it yourself, right? For prepackaged functions, that's a given, right? Because the programmers put them in, but you guys can have the same way of like professionalism with your work, and that way you know what's what and it's there, which is really cool to have once you keep working on stuff. Okay, so create pie chart, and then we're gonna feed in our population data frame. And then we're gonna do the same one for top 10 bar chart. No, not that one. There we go, that one. And we're gonna feed in our population data again. Okay. So if we've ran the plot functions one, we can go ahead and run the main py one. right? And unless we get any errors down there, we should be able to click on plots and see both of our plots, right? So we have both. Let me hide this. Right? So we get our, let me move it this way. So we get our, both the figure with the, now this is what I was talking about, the things that it says 45 angle is for the words to go that way instead of all the way down. And you angle them so they look nice and they don't overwrite each other. So there we have top 10 populations in the world. And we also get the nice percentage. Well, I wouldn't call it nice, especially there in the bottom, in the top, in the top left corner, and you can go, there's ways to like filter out data. You can say, oh, after record number 25, go ahead and delete all the names, don't show them, right? And there's stuff that we can play around with in our data frame. Okay. Any questions there with those plot functions? Let me see if everybody perfect. Great. Yeah, perfect. Yes.
What have you can?
Se mayúscula y la P mayúscula por vez. Mayúscula, sí. Contra y por sí. Right. You get it? Oh, good, sorry. Sí. Da la pros. Perfect. Okay, so we did it. We went all the way from the CSV to the plotting data sets. Okay, so if you have, we have 10 minutes at the end. This is mostly for questions, and if you want to play around with the plots, you can. But yeah, that was the whole workshop. That's it. You have any questions? Thank you for coming. Now I'm gonna ask you to fill out a survey because we love them. Okay, so let me go and pull that up so you can do it. Escape. I'm trying. There we go. Yeah, Zoom is becoming my friend slowly, surely. Okay.
So yeah, so for those in person, we'll actually teach you guys how to export all of the data that are in your workshop accounts, since those are only temporary for workshops only. If you are doing research with the professor, you can get an FSU account and continue running this, but you can also download Spider on your own computer and run that as well. So yeah, so we'll probably do that within the last like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you want to shift to the, or is it thinking?
And knows that
Oh, okay.
my computer is good too. Well, this works out. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you all for coming. And then our, oh, thank you so much. And then for virtual attendees, thank you all for attending. And then we hope that this is helpful as an intermediate Python exercise.
Okay, guys. Perfect.
You can stop.
Also, solutions will be, which is basically what you did at the end. They will be sent out as well.
And a recording
And I'm recording.
as well.
Okay.
Now you can shut down the recording, Alex. Cool.
I'm gonna